What's going on, everybody? It is Coach Deep, ethnic dating coach. All right. So let me tell you something that dating apps won't admit. And it's something your friends are not going to tell you either. All right. Most of you already know this. Um, and it might not be any surprise to you, but some of you guys really need to hear it. All right. From a dating coach. When it comes to height and dating, there's a range that gets the most matches, the most attention, and overall the most respect. All right. And it's not what you guys think, right? It's definitely not 5'9". All right. And it's not 6'6". It's actually exactly 6 feet tall. All right. So I'm going to be breaking down the data, the psychology, and the reality of how women perceive height and how it affects your dating life. All right. And the truth is, this might piss you off. All right. You may not feel good about it, right? But the information I'm about to give you might save your dating life. So let's get right into it. All right. First, let's get into the data. Let's talk numbers here. All right. All right. So there's a study out there by OkCupid. All right. They did this massive study with over 20,000 users. Men under 5'9" received 30 to 40% fewer messages than men who were 6 feet or taller. All right. And this is with the same profile, same pictures, same bio. The only thing that was changed was the height. So there was a difference between the guys who were listed as 5'8" and then the same exact guys with the same exact profiles listed as 6 feet. So you're getting almost half the responses if you're a guy who's 5'8" compared to a guy who's 6 foot. All right. Now I got some data here from Bumble. All right. This is Bumble's internal data. It shows that over 60% of women filter their matches by height. And the most common cutoff is, you guessed it, 6 feet. So if you're under 6 feet, you're literally being eliminated, right, before this chick even reads your bio. All right. And that's just the reality of it. Like, if you're a dude who's 5'9", which is pretty much the average height in the United States, you're not short, but you're average. You're at a normal height. And the problem here is that in the dating world, average, normal equals invisible. All right. It equals just another face in a sea of men. All right. Especially when it comes to online dating, because women want someone that's going to stick out. Right. So if you have a whole bunch of guys with half-ass profiles, right, that look kind of average, right, and then their heights are all about the same, average, and then you got a guy who looks wise maybe average, but now he's coming out at 6 foot, 6'1". Guess who's going to stick out? Obviously, the guy who's 6'1", just like in real life. All right. So when a woman sets her filter to 6 foot minimum, what ends up happening? You, as an average guy with an average height, you disappear, and she never sees your profile, right? No matter how witty it is, no matter, what kind of job you have, no matter what school you went to, you're not going to stick out. All right. You're eliminated before the game even started. All right. And it's not fair, but life isn't fair. All right. And the reality is a guy who's 5'9" has to work 10 times harder on his profile, on his pictures, on his bio, and his opening lines, just to get the same attention as a guy who's 6 foot. All right. And that's the solution. So if you're a guy who's about average height, right, 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", right, you're just going to have to work better in other areas: grooming, fitness, style, career, conversation skills. You really can't afford to be average at that point. All right. And the reality, me as a dating coach, I can tell you this, right? The truth is, the cutoffs are the ideal height, or the ideal height is anywhere between 5'10" and a half. But I'm going to give you a range. So if you're anywhere between this range, you're going to do okay. 5'10" and a half up until 6'4". These are the prime heights. This if you're in any of this category, within this category of your height, you're in a good place. All right. I myself am 6'1", so I understand the advantage I have. Right. But now there is one advantage, because guys can't solely rely on their height. right? If you learn how to talk to women, you learn pickup, you learn actual riz from a coach like myself, right? A 5'9" guy with charisma and riz can outperform a 6 foot guy who's boring and has nothing to talk about, right? But again, if you're a 5'9" guy and you're not leveled up in these other areas, you're going to struggle. That's the truth of it, is you are going to struggle. All right. Now let's get back into the 6 foot guy, right? Let's call it the range of 5'10" and a half up until 6'4". All right. This is what I call the Goldilocks zone. All right. It's a sweet spot. It's that magic number. All right. The magic numbers, 5'10" and a half up until 6'4". So what ends up happening at 6 feet actually is you trigger this instinctual protection response in women, especially on dating apps. Because in real life, you could be 5'10" and a half and you'll look pretty similar to a guy who's 6 foot. You look tall, you look taller than average, so you will get attention. When it comes to dating apps, yes, a lot of women are filtering out at 6 feet, but at 5'10" and a half, you can still succeed, and you can even put yourself as 6 foot at that point on a dating app, and no one's going to really know the difference. A female is not going to bring a measuring tape to see, oh, is he an inch and a half shorter than what he listed? No one's going to do that, right? So again, at 6 foot, you trigger this instinctual protection response in women. And this is from evolutionary psychology, right? It tells us that women are wired to prefer men who can physically protect them. Women like men who are big and strong, right? Women, again, tall. Tall is just appearance wise, it just appears that a guy has more power, more control, and is able to protect more than a guy who's 5'5", 5'6". All right. And here's the key. At 6 foot, you trigger that response without crossing into intimidation, right? A guy who's 5'9" blends in. Now let's go on to the other side of this, right? Let's say you're a guy who's above 6'4". Let's say you're a guy who's 6'6". What ends up happening, what a lot of guys don't realize, because I get a lot of guys who wish they were 6'5", 6'6", and above, the heights of like NBA players. What happens is you trigger a threat response, right? A guy who's 6'6", the average guy who is 6'6", not an NBA star, right? But a guy who's 6'6" walking down the street, people are going to be intimidated by this guy. It's too overwhelming, right? Around that 6 foot range that I was telling you, that is the perfect balance. Dominant, but not aggressive. Protective, appearing, but not intimidating. Now, really think about this, right? Think about Hollywood. Forget about just the white man having the privilege and being seen as the ideal, Prince Charming, right? Think about every romantic lead, all right? Aside from race, James Bond, 6 foot. Brad Pitt, 6 foot. Chris Evans, 6 foot. Hollywood loves to cast men that are this height for a reason. Because studies have already shown, like I told you, women rate men at 6 foot as the most attractive. Not taller, not shorter, exactly 6 feet. So in the real world, a 6 foot guy walks in a room and he commands attention. People aren't going to feel too small around him. He's approachable, but not intimidating. And he's dominant, but not aggressive. Just the perfect balance of masculinity, right? Or appeared masculinity, all right? But here's the catch. Here's what I'm going at. Being 6 foot doesn't automatically get you a girl. It gets you in the door, right? The rest is up to you in your personality, confidence, grooming, and riz, game, all right? So if you're 6 foot and you're boring, you have nothing to talk about, you don't have any game, nervous, timid, shy, you're going to lose out to the guy who's 5'9", who has all these great qualities of being charismatic, being confident, being sure of himself, having things to talk about, things like that, right? If you're a guy who's 6 foot and insecure, women will smell it, right? Women will realize that. So if you're a guy who's 6 foot, like myself, 6'1", you do have a cheat code. So don't waste it, all right? Don't waste the freaking cheat code. Your height gets you in the door, and your personality is what's going to keep you there, all right? You really have no excuse if you're a guy who's, again, between the heights of 5'10" and a half and 6'4", all right? Now, again, let's talk about the guy who's 6'6". Like I was saying, most guys think that this is some type of superpower. But again, here's when it gets real interesting. Once you pass that 6'4" mark, you are at a huge disadvantage, pretty much similar to a guy who's 5'5". And like I was telling you, there's already studies done that women prefer guys who are around 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", etc. You don't want to look like a threat, and that's what you look like at 6'6", right? A guy who's too tall is going to appear awkward. It's going to be uncomfortable hugging him, right? Holding hands is going to be weird, right? For a female. Dancing for a female who's 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", with a guy who's 6'6" plus is going to be awkward. Almost a whole foot taller, sometimes more, right? So here's a social reality. Tall guys are expected to be dominant and confident, but if you're 6'6" and shy, you're perceived as creepy. If you're a little bit too aggressive, you're perceived as intimidating. So there's definitely a disadvantage for guys who are 6'6". So what is the solution here, right? Because really, you guys want solutions. You don't want just facts. You don't want just data, right? Data feels good. Data gives you justification, but we want results, right? If you're a guy who's 6'6", here's what you do, all right? You over-index on warmth, humor, approachability. You lose that aura of intimidation, all right? The less intimidating you appear, the more attractive you're going to appear as a guy who's 6'6". So again, smiling a lot, being talkative, and just being someone who is pretty much a friendly giant. That's the only way you're going to win as a guy who's 6'6" with most females, all right? Now let's get back to the guy who's 5'9". He's got the opposite problem. He's invisible, right? The guy who's 5'8", 5'7", invisible. Nobody knows he's there. He just blends in, or he just can't even be seen, all right? So again, personality, charisma, confidence, all these things, right, are going to matter when you're a guy who's very short, right? Short kings, like a lot of people like to call them nowadays, right? And again, for the guy who's 5'10", 5'11", 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", you got the advantage. Don't waste it. Don't waste it, right? Do something with it, right? If you're a guy who's struggling in that height range, there's something really wrong with your personality in terms of your confidence, in terms of your social skills, and that's something that a coach can help you with, right? I've seen guys who are 6'2" go home alone because they had no game and they just relied on their height. While at the same time, I've seen guys who are 5'6" go home with a chick while the guy who was 6'2" went home with nothing. All right. So again, height matters. It's not everything, but it does matter. And being a certain range will give you an advantage. All right. Again, certain range, you're in the Goldilocks zone. These other ranges, anything outside of this certain range of 5'10" till 6'4", you're anything outside of that, you're in a bad place in terms of immediate attraction, because everything is coming down to immediate attraction here, right? We can break through immediate attraction, right? Again, if you're too tall, we can work around it. If you're too short, we can work around it. All right. That's what you need a dating coach for. All right. So stop obsessing over inches and stop obsessing over height and whether you're going to be attractive as a guy who's 5'7". Initially, you may not, but if you have the right energy, yes, you'll attract any woman you desire at the end of the day. All right. So again, I'm a dating coach for men. All right. I help guys out of all backgrounds, all races, all ethnicities, all heights. I've done it all with students. All right. Reach out to me. If you're a short king and you need some help, I'm the guy for you. If you're a giant and you're awkward around women and you're just too tall, I'm the guy for you. If you're a guy who's 6 foot and you struggle, you definitely need a coach like myself, because your life should be on easy mode at that point. But you need some game. You need some riz. No matter what height you are, you need riz and you need game. All right. So again, reach out to me, Desi Dating Coach, Ethnic Dating Coach. All right. I'm running boot camps in Vegas starting in September. Check my website out, Desi Dating Coach.